Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about classes, specifically about grouping data. So we can use classes to group data together, and we can use methods in those classes to actually perform actions on that data. So just in general, remember that data that is closely related can be treated as kind of one thing with different parts to it, and those different parts are the attributes, the class. So we use the class keyword to create a user-defined type of object that contains groups of related variables and functions. So variables of a class are called attributes, and I mentioned that in the previous lesson. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let me pull up my screen here, our handy dandy VS Code, and oops, let me shrink this down just a little bit. Oh, too late for that, I guess. We're gonna have a wide screen here. Oh, no, let's make that a little bit smaller. There we go. More manageable. Okay, so we're going to be talking here about grouping data. Let's come up with a nice little example. Let's say we're going to have a class called person. So we're going to start off class, that's our keyword class, and we have person here. And then we're going to use our colon, our magic little colon there, and let's put in some kind of a doc string here, class that represents a person. Alrighty, now we've got that. Then we're going to have this thing that's, I'm going to teach you a little bit of the lingo here. So when you use this double underline here, we call that dunder. It's just short for double underline. So in a class, you have this thing that we call a constructor. And a constructor is a method that's run when you instantiate the object. And I'm getting ahead of myself there. I talked about it a little bit in the last lesson, but when we instantiate objects, that's when we're actually creating the object. It's when we're taking this class that is serving as our blueprint, we're making an actual object out of it. That's what we call instantiation. And the way we instantiate, or in other words, make an instance of an object from the class, is we call on its constructor, basically. So we'll get to that. This right here is our constructor, and constructors always start this way. We do a def under, a dunder, init, dunder, and then we're saying self. And self is a reference to the object that we are creating. So bear with me on this one. But what we do is we're going to start off saying self.gender, and we're going to set this. And remember, this is when we're constructing the object. This is when we're initially setting it up. So this is going to run as the first thing that happens. And then we're going to set self.age equals, let's say, 18. So this is all there is to our class so far. Very simple. And the way we actually make something, the way we instantiate it is we call on it. So we say John equals person, and then let's run this thing and see what happens. It's going to be terribly exciting. Yes, a whole lot of nothing just happened. So why is that? Because we didn't ask it to do anything. But now if we were to say print John dot, and now this is something I need to tell you about. So we have attributes within our class, or within our object, within our class. How do we access that? Well, we access it through what we call the member operator, or dot notation. So attributes can be accessed using the attribute reference operator. So you essentially use the name of the instance, the name of the object, and then dot for the dot notation we talked about, dot, and then the attribute name. So I'm going to use age here. And if we run this, we look and we see that it's 18. Yay. And if we were to put in the same thing, print John dot gender, yes. And if you're using something like VS Code, it's going to give you suggestions. Once you hit that dot, because you've defined it up here, VS Code is just really smart, and it knows what's available to you. So it knows that age is available. It knows that gender is available. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in gender, and we're going to run it, and we get 18 and male. So now, what do you think would happen if we wanted to change this? And I'm jumping a little bit ahead in the lessons, but let's just go ahead and try this out. John.age equals 22. And then let's just go ahead and print out John's age again and see what happens. And you get what we thought, 22. So this is also how you're going to be, you can assign things directly. Sometimes you might want to hide this and not make it where it's available. And there are ways of doing that. But for now, we're just going to allow it to change it directly here. One thing that you could do is have a function in here called get older. And let's say get older. And we just say that self dot age plus equals 1. So this could be, oops, hold on just a second. Oh, so it's not defined. So we're going to send in self here. And so we need to send in self here for the get older part. So if we run this, hold on just a second, and let's just go down here and say John.get older. And then if we go down here and we do a print of John.age, let's see what happens here. We get 23. So we look up here and we've got this method now called get older on person. So when we instantiate John, John gets that method for free. It's part of its class. It's part of its definition. It's that blueprint that we're using. So we can call, if we made a Bob, Bob would have get older too. So we called on get older here. And the reason I'm showing you this is to show you that there are ways of keeping your attributes kind of out of the eyes of the user. In other words, they don't need to necessarily see the attributes like gender or age. Let's say you had a def tell age here, and you just, again, you'd send in self, in other words, the instance of the object. And what we do here is for this, let's have it directly print the age. So by doing this, what we're doing is we're hiding this age from the user. Sure, we know it's there and we're using it here, but if you wanted to give them high-level access so that all they had to do is interact with person through the methods, you can do that. So you can have it do something like you can have it do like, let's say we're not going to do a print age here. We're just going to say John.tell age. And then over here, let's just take out gender reference there. We're going to take out the direct modification of it. We're going to go over here and use get older. And then let's just go ahead and do the tell age again. What this is going to do is we're instantiating John. We're making John. We're going to make him an 18-year-old male. Then we're going to go over here and we're going to make him older, which will basically just add a year to him. And then we're going to tell the age again. So it'll tell us, hey, I'm 18. Then it'll increment it by 1. Then it'll tell us its age is now 19. So if we do that, sure enough, it's 18, then it's 19. And this is what we talked about in the last lesson about hiding details from the user, only letting them use the functions and everything that you give them access to. Don't give them access to those nitty-gritty details like the attributes. Just let them interact with the object through the functions that the methods that you make available for them. So this is one way of doing it. We don't discuss this in this lesson. This is just kind of extra stuff that I want to talk to you about because this is important to know, and we're going to get into this a little bit later. But yeah, keep this stuff in mind. Also, there were a couple other points in here. You can create multiple instances of a class, each with its own attribute values. So we can make down here Bob equals person, and we can have let's say Bob.tell age. And just to show you that it doesn't affect John at all, we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to have him tell his age. So sure enough, we got Bob here who's 18, and that doesn't affect John's age at all, 19. So you can create a billion of these if you wanted to, and there would be no problem with that. Probably memory-wise, there'd be an issue, but you're going to create separate instances of these things, and each one keeps all of its unique attributes separate from the others. So keep that in mind. Also, in naming a class, they want you to use capitalization for each first word that you use there. So it's not really a rule, but it's a common practice, and it's how you kind of keep certain things separate. Like for classes, you'll have a capital there. For functions, you're going to do not dunder. You're going to use the lowercase. I think some people call it camel case, things like that. So there's different. There are different common practices, and with classes, we just use capital for the first words of each word of it. So if you wanted to say class, classy person, whatever, you just do first, for each word, you'd do a capital on each one. That just kind of, it shows people that you mean for it to be a class. It's not a hard written rule. It's just, it's a norm. So that is it for this lesson. I've gone a little bit outside of the bounds of what the lesson is supposed to cover, but if you have any questions, as always, reach out and email, set up a Zoom meeting. I'll be happy to meet with you, explain whatever you're having trouble with, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Aloha.